Good morning, everybody. And yes, Keaton and I are almost wearing the exactly same pants. It's not your imagination. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. How many kids go to your high school?
About 1,400.
So it's a big school.
Yeah, for our area.
So January 23rd that week, it was supposed to be Spirit Week at school, right? What
Yeah.
would happen during Spirit Week?
We have a lot of school spirit at our school. We're very proud of our sports teams and our basketball team. Usually everyone participates from freshmen to seniors. That day it was actually USA Day. So everybody was decked out in their, American shirts, and we're all excited. Spirit Week is usually, one of the highlights of the whole year. So,
Before getting to school that morning, what do you remember about that morning? What was going on at home?
it was normal. I mean, I got ready, fought over the bathroom with my little brother. Had a little spat with my mom. I got in my car and drove to school. It was a normal morning, and then.
And then at what point when you got to school did you realize something was going wrong or something was different in a bad way?
I was sitting in my car. Me and my friends have a group message where every morning we text and say when we get to school so we can all walk in together. And one of my friends was running late, so I was still sitting in my car when usually I would be in the school by that point. And I'd actually just sent the text, "I'm going to go in without you. You're going to make me late." And it would have been the first time that I had done that since I had gotten my driver's license. And I look up and I just see so many students running out of the school. And we've had, bomb threats and things of that nature that really summed up to nothing. Just, some kid that wanted to get out of a science test. And that was the first thing that ran through my head, but I thought nobody's ever that scared. And I actually saw one of the teachers who was on parking lot duty that morning just drop his walkie-talkie. And I knew whatever he had been told was something unimaginable.
So what happened next? You got out of your car, and then where did you go?
I was ushered into the weightlifting room of our football stadium, along with about 30 other students. And I called my mother, and I told her I was okay, but I knew that some people weren't.
Mm-hmm. How did you know? Had it started to murmurs through the kids, or did they make a huge announcement? How did you realize when they said there was an active shooter on campus?
There were people in the room with me who had fled from the Commons area where the shooting took place. Students who claimed to have seen the gun, to see him, to see the blood. People with actual blood on their hands, things of that nature. I knew this was not just a drill. This wasn't a rumor. And then the names started to fly around. Mm-hmm. And that's when it set in that it not only had this happened at my school, it might have happened to some of the people that I care about. So everything got very real, very fast.
When you were in the weight room, were you all quiet? What were people doing? Were they texting? Were they calling? What was the instruction you were supposed to do? And then what did people really do?
We were hysterical.
Yeah.
No one in there was silent. Everyone was just... people were running up to you, "Have you seen my little sister?" and begging you to tell them you had. It was so much emotion in one room, and it was like, I'm the kind of person, I don't want to cry in front of anyone. That is like the most embarrassing thing to me, but like none of that mattered. Mm-hmm. We were all very, just exposed, and it didn't really seem to matter. And not until that moment that we realized that the shooter was actually in the room with us and the cops came in, was there ever any silence. And you could have heard a pin drop from a single second.
I want to pick up on that, but I do want to say something. You and your mom are real close. I was talking to you guys earlier. What was she saying to you on the other end when you were calling her and texting her?
She was asking who was in the room with me.
Mm-hmm.
We had actually just watched an episode of the show One Tree Hill. And in that show, if anybody's familiar with it, there's actually a school shooting. And the main characters end up in a safe room with the shooter. And we had just watched that episode together, and it was emotional. We both cried, and we were like, I can't imagine. And so that was very fresh on her mind. And I told her that I knew everyone in there, and in reality, I didn't. There were about 4 people I didn't know, and only one of them was calm. Mm-hmm. He just kind of looked expressionless.
And that person who was expressionless, you learned later, was the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So the marshals came into the room, and then can you walk us through exactly what happened once they came into the weight room?
They opened the door and they pointed a gun right at him, and
They knew who it was. They knew.
Yeah, people that were listening to the police scanner knew that he was in the weight room. Fortunately, none of my family was listening to it, because I can't imagine what kind of train wreck they would have been, because they all knew where I was at. And he just got up and walked out, as simple as, somebody was like, hey, come with us. It wasn't, he didn't look scared or anything.
This was 3 months ago. How are you doing? How are you and your friends doing?
I think we're doing as good as we can.
Yeah.
This is a lot to process. There's no, set way on how you're supposed to go about handling something like this. But
how was it handled at school in the following days?
Our administration was great. They have made sure every decision they've made has been what the students want, whether it's something from safety protocols to what we're having for lunch. And that's something that really helped us through that. And our community just came together. I mean, one morning, one of our neighboring schools bought the whole school donuts. And, the amount of love and support that we've been showed has really made us feel like we're not alone.
Now, you've become an activist on this issue, but you weren't initially.
Yeah.
Initially, you were a little bit paralyzed by all this. And I've read and I've seen an interview with you where you said the Parkland shooting awakened something in you. What happened? What happened to your mindset after Parkland?
Yeah, immediately after, I definitely had that sense of pity. I didn't want to hear about what good could come out of it. I just kind of wanted to wallow and feel sorry and think that there was nothing good that could possibly come out of this. And my mom told me, you might find your place in all this. Maybe you'll be a crisis counselor, or maybe you'll travel and tell people about, preventative measures, or maybe you'll, become an activist for change. And I was like, don't tell me that. I just want to be sad. And after the Parkland shooting and seeing these students be so brave so immediately after, I mean, it was the next day, I couldn't help but ask myself, if I would have spoke out as soon as they did, what would have happened to them? And that's not fair for me to ask, but you can't help but do it. So I felt this urgency. This isn't something that I can wait around and feel sad about. I can't wait for myself to heal. This can be part of my healing process. And it really has. It has helped me so much, because honestly, you think about it all the time. You wake up in the morning and you start that day over and you work your way through and then you start over again. So if I'm having to think about it, I might as well be doing good with that.
So what steps did you take to activate your activism? You can have the idea and want to do it, but what did you decide to do?
There was a group of students from the Frankfort area, which is the Kentucky state capital, who were kind of brainstorming about having a rally on the Capitol steps. And my friends and I reached out to them and said, we would be very interested. We would love to help. We can be your Western Kentucky liaisons. We want to be involved. And it kind of took off from there. We had an amazing turnout. We actually had a bus come from Marshall County, a charter bus, and took about 50 students. And it was amazing. And after that, I was like, what's next? This is over. I focused all my energy into that, and then I got in contact with the Pritchard Community Student Voice Team, and it's a Kentucky group that its main focus is improving our education system, and they were planning a similar rally, and I got involved with it, and that took place, and then it was like, okay, what's next now? So on the National March for Our Lives Day, we had one in Marshall County, and I spoke at it and got involved with it, and after that, the next thing was for me to plan my own independently, and now I'm planning a rally that will take place in Paducah, which is a city near Marshall County, and it is going to be for education in general, just improving our education system.
When you think about what changes you'd like to see, can you tell me 3 things you'd like to see change that you think would specifically stop school shootings?
I think that there's no sure way that we can fix this, but I think that every single measure we can take to prevent it from happening needs to happen. Honestly, for anything that is not going to create a greater risk. I would love to see, a school resource officers, highly trained, the best of their kind. I think that should be the most honorable role, not someone, who's in training or is retired. I think it should be the most well-equipped, best man for the job. I would love to see metal detectors in schools, the walkthrough kinds. That way, you kind of avoid invading that sense of privacy, and it's more efficient. It creates a less target-rich environment. And then I would love to see some common sense gun reform.
What does that mean to you, common sense gun reform?
I think that means a ban on bump stocks and large capacity magazines, assault weapons, higher background checks, and raising the age limit.
Now, you're from a part of the world where guns are a part of life. And in fact, even some of the victims' parents aren't that crazy about gun control. What has it been like to be an activist in a town, in a part of the country that really isn't necessarily on board with gun control measures?
It's been difficult. And at first, I kind of tried to avoid the subject, but it was always there, and I realized I couldn't avoid it anymore. Although this is not my only focus, it seems to be the only one that people have an issue with. So we need to open the conversation. I've found that social media is not the best way to do that for me personally. I think spreading the word is great, but social media can bring out a very negative side in people. They tend to say things on there that they wouldn't say to your face.
Have you been attacked on social media?
Yes, definitely. Well, there's been lots of name calling, people from my area and people outside of it. People don't tend to consider what someone else is going through, which is what I've really tried to do recently after I was approached by an NRA supporter at a rally who didn't know where I was from, didn't know what I had been through. He had kind of gone at me in an attacking way, asking why I was supporting what I was supporting, and I told him, I'm a student from Marshall County High School. I lost 2 of my classmates, and his entire tone changed.
Really?
So I try to consider, I don't know what these people are going through, so I shouldn't judge them based on what they're saying. So that's why I try to, I'm trying to avoid social media. I think that open forums are a lot better way to communicate your message. But for the most part, people have been supportive.
I'm going to open it up to questions from the floor in just a few minutes. I'm wondering, have the security measures changed at your school?
Yes.
In what way?
We have metal detecting wands, and we have bag checks. We also have alarms on our entrances because our school has an overwhelming amount of doors, completely unnecessary amount. Our school was built in the 70s. I don't know why. I don't know why we felt the need to have so many doors. Most of them don't get used at all, but they do have alarms now, except for the main entrances. And we're about to go through a remodel, which will improve those measures. That's another thing I would really like to see is safety inspections to examine the layouts of schools and make sure they're not creating that target-rich environment. But a great thing about that people don't tend to realize with the bag checks and with the wands, it is an invasion of your privacy, but it gives you that one-on-one communication that not every student's getting. These aren't resource officers doing this. This is our teachers. Every morning, I'm told, good morning. How was your weekend? What are your plans for after school? What's for lunch today? That's not something everyone's getting at home. So that's one amazing benefit that I've noticed.
It doesn't bother you that your interaction with your teacher is that, well, they were wanting you for a weapon?
After experiencing the shooting, it doesn't bother me as much as you might think. I know that it makes other students in my school feel safer, so I'm willing to be compliant with that. I would really, really like to see the walk-through metal detectors, and I believe that's something that our school is looking into purchasing. I think that it would be a much more efficient way of doing it, but I'm willing to work with them on that.
Do we have any questions from the audience? I see a hand back there.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ross, and I was going to ask, for students who want to get involved, what advice would you give to them, like if they don't know where to start?
I would definitely say look on social media for events coming up. Reach out to those people and say, and offer your help, offer to speak. And if you are open to talking about it, I would suggest talking about it on social media, but maybe avoiding those people who come at you with a negative tone, not willing to have an educated discussion, because that's something that I was really looking for on social media platforms, and it's not something that you tend to receive, on that forum. If you can get people at an event that it's meant to talk face-to-face, schedule a meeting with your superintendent, talk about your budget, see if you have a nickel tax, and see if that can be used on school safety.
Any other questions from the audience?
Jill Christensen from the National Education Association. My question is, obviously your teachers are very welcoming right now as you all come into the school, talk to you about lunch, what's going on, etc., as they do a security check with you. Would you like that action of still checking in with you once you have other security measures there in place so that teachers can continue to check in one-on-one?
Yes, I think that would be a great thing. I think that fundamentally education is the backbone of this country. Everyone has had an education, which is what makes such intelligent minds. But students aren't at their greatest potential if they don't have that support that they need. And it is very hard to have that one-on-one connection with a classroom of 30 students. But if you're able to greet them as they come through the door, you can personally speak to each one of them every morning, and I think that could be very beneficial.
One last question for me. So many politicians have said, you know what, these are kids. They're passionate and they're going through a lot. We really maybe have to take a grain of salt with what they're doing. They're really speaking from their heart, not from necessarily thinking about policy. What would you say to a politician who says that about you?
I would say whenever you have experienced the feeling of running for your life in a single instant, you're not a child anymore. You are forced to grow up and experience adult emotions and handle things in an adult way, and we should be considered, survivors, people who have been through something that maybe you haven't, and we might have a different take on things. We are experiencing this firsthand. This is something, and I'll say, before, I'll admit it, hearing a number like 2 didn't affect me the way it does now. Before that sounded like such a small number. Oh, that's not that bad. But after you experience that, you experience just how much a number as small as 2 can be. So they should really open up the conversation to us, invite us to come speak with them. They don't have to, take action to everything we say, but at least listen to us and take some of our ideas and work with us on that.
Keaton, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.